Hey, good morning, everybody. I want to talk a little bit about Torah this morning. This is Thursday, August 29th, as I'm recording this video. It's 8:41 a.m. Eastern Time, and a blog post will go up later today on my blog. Every Thursday, I publish some kind of commentary on a selection of the Torah. These are like little portions, little chunks of the Torah, parshat or parsha. And the idea is that if you read these on a weekly basis, then you're going to make your way through all of Torah in a year. And then at the end of that cycle, there's a kind of a minor festival, sort of just a recognition, Simchat Torah, the joy of Torah, where you kind of celebrate the completion of the reading cycle, and then you start again, and the cycle repeats. And so this is really cool. I think this is important because this is one of those practices where it kind of, I think, binds Jewish people together and connects us over the centuries, millennia, of engaged in this biblical reading cycle, right? In this Torah following the Parsha. Is a way that we're all connected. And I like this idea that a global community of multiculturalism and diverse beliefs and diverse observances and practices, that one of the things that binds Jews together is this commitment to this weekly reading cycle, which is not to say that normatively you ought to do it, but it's something that I think is important to do. But I do it in sort of the Adam style, right? Which is to bring in some commentary, to think critically about the text itself. So the way that I treat the Parsha is not always necessarily to follow the narrative as it develops, but it's really to look at what's kind of underneath the text, what's inspiring the text, what's influencing the text. And then I try to draw sometimes some parallels with kind of contemporary stuff when applicable. One of the things that I've been thinking about this week is the future of our people, but also, where I fit into that individually. And this is a thing that I think about a lot because I've said this frequently, that my identity within the Jewish community is, I've used the word fraught before. I've said halakhically problematic. That is by Jewish law interpretation. I'm kind of a funny case. On the one hand, there's clear matrilineal descent, which would count me a member of the tribe. On the other hand, my Jewish identity was not revealed, was not disclosed to my mom, and then so I didn't know that as well. Learned this in adolescence, so I've always been kind of a funny case in the community. But I feel connected to us. It's very important to me. My identity means a lot to me, and I feel it in my bones. As it were. And I'm always looking for opportunities where I give some credibility to that position, the kind of difficult test case that I am. And I think in the Parsha that we're reading this week, we're in the book of Deuteronomy, and I've been making videos about Deuteronomy. You could get yourself up to speed. We're still a little bit early on in the book of Deuteronomy. We're around chapters 11 and 12 in the Parsha right now. Actually, the Parsha goes from chapter 11 through chapter 16, give or take a few verses in there. Where I find the kind of modern application in this and where it speaks to my unique test case and may speak to your unique circumstances as well, is that we're seeing in Deuteronomy, in the book of Deuteronomy here, pretty significant revision of the older kind of cultic practices, the older festivals, the older expression of the Israelite religion. Deuteronomy is really revising some of those older standards. Most significantly in the book of Deuteronomy is the centralization of worship, the centralization of cultic practices in Jerusalem. That's a big part of, there's a king, Josiah, and King Josiah is driving this political reform. And the book of Deuteronomy, its core material is chapters 12 through 26. That core material in the heart of Deuteronomy is described as a scroll of Torah, which you could just interpret as a book of instruction or a book of the law. We use Torah to talk about all 5 books, the opening books of the Christian Old Testament, the opening books of the Tanakh or the Hebrew Bible. So we usually talk about Torah to refer to all 5 of those books, or called the Pentateuch the Pentateuch may be another way to understand those books. But Torah itself just means law or instruction. So when you say a scroll of Torah, you also mean kind of a book of instruction or book of law. So those 12 through 26, that core scroll of Torah, then undergoes significant periods of redaction where it's expanded, it's given a literary framework and things like this. You can read this. If you're interested in this, this is what I've been writing on recently. So you can go and read, get yourself up to speed if this sounds interesting to you. But at any rate, as you centralize worship, you are changing the Israelite religion. You're doing a completely new thing. And we're really seeing this in a pointed way in these chapters in the Parsha this week, from chapters 11 through 16. And the festival calendar must sort of be reworked in some ways, because the original sacrificial system and calendar was built around the idea that you would have accessible to you a local site for sacrifice. But one of the things that King Josiah wants to accomplish here is centralization into Jerusalem. Now, a couple of funny things. One historiographical or one commentary note is that according to the history of the Deuteronomistic historian, at the time that Deuteronomy is supposed to be taking place, nobody's in Jerusalem just yet. That by the Deuteronomistic historian, which Deuteronomy is the introductory book to that literature, in that history, David has to get to Jerusalem and conquer Jerusalem and bring the Ark of the Covenant with him. And that's where you get Jerusalem as the site where God dwells, the site of the temple. Solomon's temple is supposed to be purportedly the first temple. And then after you're done with the Babylonian exile, there's a second temple constructed there in Jerusalem. But as of the time that the book of Deuteronomy is supposed to be taking place, that hasn't happened yet. So all the editor there, all the Deuteronomistic historian can say, he can't say Jerusalem, because in the manufactured history here, in the constructed history, you're not in Jerusalem just yet. So he has to say there will be only sacrifices at the place where God will show you. So that's how Jerusalem is described in this literature, the place where God will show you. So that's an interesting historical note, or at least editorial or commentary note there. But the other thing that we're seeing is the Passover festival is being described in these chapters of Deuteronomy that I'm talking about. And the Passover festival has to be reworked, because the way that the Passover festival was supposed to work is that you would slaughter the Pesach, or the Paschal lamb, you would slaughter the Passover sacrifice in your own doorway. And then you would put some of the blood on your doorpost as a sign that you are an Israelite and that you should be protected. That's kind of the lore around Passover. But if you're centralizing worship, then you can't have people just sacrificing in their doorways, right? That would go against the decree to centralize all sacrifice at the place where God will show you, which really means Jerusalem, but in the history, you can't call it Jerusalem yet. Does that all make some sense? So what you have to do is you've got to rework Pesach. You've got to rework the sacrifice in order to cohere with this centralization of worship that the Deuteronomistic historian is laying out for us. So you got to rework Passover. And so now let me make the connection to me and my unique circumstances and the unique circumstances of other people that I would count as full-fledged members of our tribe, even if they're a little bit halakhically problematic, is to say something like this. If the authors of Deuteronomy likely first scribes in the court of King Josiah, and then other editors and redactors over time, likely affiliated with the with the Levite tribe. The Levitical tribe of priests probably had a hand in this. And yet, when you get some kosher rules in Deuteronomy, they don't exactly match the priestly literature. So I don't think we can say without a doubt this is a Levitical high priesthood composing and editing these texts, because the original layers of editing don't appear to be aware of the priestly rules around kashrut. Of course, the word kosher never appears in Torah itself at all. Okay, I'm saying a lot of things. But if we can rework Passover, right? If we can take this like really signature festival and the ancient editors are fine to just rework it, then why are we not in the 21st century fine to rework some of the stuff that we're about? And so that's kind of the claim that I'll be making in my blog as I rehearse the ancient history, introduce some commentary, and then try to build a bridge to a more contemporary interpretive frame. That's what I'll be writing about today. So there's a 10-minute teaser on what you'll see coming out later today on Chitzonim, or that's on my blog. So if you're interested in these Parsha commentaries, go and subscribe. I don't charge anything for a subscription, but it just makes sure that you get each post in your inbox. And every single Thursday, you get a post just like the one I described. Have an awesome day today, friends. I hope all is well with you.